We spoke with a prison doctor earlier in the podcast, and she also spoke about the really desperate impact that Spice had had. And she obviously saw people when they arrived in her healthcare wing. When you were just on the K wing, was it noticeable the change in people's behaviour?
Right, so it sort of come into the prison service round about maybe 212, 213, maybe a little bit later. At first, it's one of them things. No one really reacted. You didn't know what was happening. It was unheard of. At that time, you could still buy it £5 a bag, green material with some chemicals. It has developed and moved on. It's probably 40 times stronger. It's more addictive than heroin. Um, if you look at a classic case, somebody who smokes too much or is not used to it, or anybody, they could take just one drag, the joint. They will pass out. 20 minutes later, they will wake up, probably be violently ill, disorientated, can become quite violent, low blood pressure, low heart rate. So the nursing staff have to make a decision whether they keep them in prison and manage them or they send them out. The impact on the ambulance service, I don't know if anyone's talked about that or facts or figures, must be horrendous. I do know Forest Bank, daily occurrence, daily, sometimes twice a day, ambulances coming into prison and taking people to hospital. The worst case I have seen was a young lad. He wasn't in prison for particularly serious offence. He had 2 episodes on Spice. The first one, he ended on healthcare when I was there. Took about 15 staff to restrain him and bring him to the healthcare. He was out of it for a few days. Then he went back to K-Wing. We got him back a week later. Psychotic episode. Said he got the devil in his head. And without being too graphic, it come to a point where he was jumping off the bed into a concrete wall. You can imagine the damage. You try and do that, not putting his hands out, literally, falling off the bed. And again, I don't want to be too graphic, gouging his eyes. When he eventually, and it took a lot of doing, got to hospital, he lost his eyesight. Sadly, this was round about maybe 213, 214. That lad is still in psychiatric hospital. So that's someone who'd had no mental illness, psychiatric episode on Spice, and 7 years later he's still in hospital and he's blind. So it is a very, very dangerous drug. Very dangerous.
Turning to Strangeways, it's an incredibly iconic building. Can you remember your first thoughts or impressions when you saw it on your first day?
Okay, so the outside, other than the old gatehouse on Southwell Street, generic prison wall, they all look the same. The actual gate, modern building. So the first time I actually went in the building, you come out where you collect your keys. It's a sterile area. There's another sterile area. Sterile area is just somewhere prisoners can't get. You step out of that and you walk up the main drag, right? So the prison is divided in 2 parts. You've got the bottom jail, which literally is at the bottom of a hill. At the top of the hill, you've got the top jail. You got over to your right, the old security house, that is a listed building. It's no longer used. It was very, very daunting. These Victorian jails, next level. They could be in horror films. It has its own atmosphere. For me, early doors, it was a very negative place, which it is going to be. Lots of people there that don't want to be there, including the staff. Just overwhelming, really.
And it's said that the walls are 16 foot thick.
No, they're not. They're not that thick. If you look at a generic prison, right, the walls are no one is getting out of Strangeways. Any any high security jail, nobody's getting out. If they're getting out, they're going to need a lot of help and firearms and things like that. It is just not going to happen. Most jails are built, there's plenty of prisons there, know the layout of the jail. They have a high outer wall. They're incredibly hard to scale. They will have an inner wall. You'll have your razor wire. You will have alarms and things like that. Plus, the place is just cameraed up. So, and there's dogs. So, actual risk of escape or risk to the public, someone getting out of strange ways. Helicopters, there's a no-fly zone. Plus these, again, all the prisoners know this, these helicopter wires over exercise yards, so there'd be nowhere for anyone to land. So, yeah, they're not quite 16 foot thick. However, you ain't getting out.
And Strange Race is also one of the sites of had a execution chamber there before the capital punishment was.
Yeah, they did. At the end of A and B wing, for want of a better word, the death cells or whatever, they have sort of blanked off now. I'm sure part of it or some of it is still there. However, for obvious reasons, they got rid of that, and nobody talks about that.
And as a prison officer, can you talk us through how long your shift would be on a typical day, and also what your daily role or day-to-day activities would be? Okay,
so I'll give you 2 days, yeah? I'll give you a day when I was on K-Wing. That's when the prison service, probably when I started in 2.5 to round, 2.15, yeah. Although there were some staffing issues, most prisons ran a regime. Prisoners were out some of the days. So a typical day on K-Wing, you get on the wing, they'd have someone in at 6:30. There was always a night officer. They would relieve the night officer so they could go home. 7:30, you'd have a briefing, and then pretty much over the next hour, we would unlock all the wing. We would we'd get the courts out first, early doors. The night officer would wake those up. They go down to reception and off the courts. We would unlock people for medication. Lots of people on medication. 7:30, they go and get their medication. We then unlock labour and education, which is people who go to work. A sentenced prisoner is required under prison rules to work. We can't provide places for everyone, but if you were told you got a job and you refuse that, then there would be a punishment.
Are they paid?
They get paid. Private sector leads the way in that. Some jobs in the private sector might earn up to £30 a week. Public sector, when I were there, if you went to education all week, you'd get somewhere between £5 and £7.50. Every prisoner used to get bang up pay if you weren't working, which was about £2.50, £3. So if you had no family, the most you would get a week was about £3 that you could spend on a canteen. So by 8:30, the whole wing's out. We'd have them out till 11 o'clock. We'd put an exercise out for an hour. Every wing had its own exercise yard. Winter or summer, onto the yard for an hour. About 12:30, we'd serve meals, or we'd finish serving meals, for about 12:30. Staff dinner for an hour. Afternoon, everyone out again. Lock them up about tea time. Lock people who come back from education and work up. Back then, we'd serve evening meal at 6 o'clock, and prisoners would be out till about 8 o'clock. On K-Wing, I was always on the landings. They had staff who worked on landings regular, and some staff did other jobs regular. That's just how it was. You find your own niche. Me, I like being on the landings.
And at lockup, can I ask about lockup? Can they continue watching TV in their rooms, or is there a time where everything's shut off?
Right, TV's a big issue. TV's a big issue for a lot of people. They've got TVs, they've got PlayStations, right? There's 3 regimes in prison. The IEP scheme, let me just explain. So when you go into prison, you go in as a standard prisoner, yeah? You will get a cell, you get your bed in and everything else, and you will have a TV in that cell. Something that people don't realize, they actually pay for that TV. If you're in a single cell, so if you get your £3 a week and you're in a cell on your own, pound of that goes to your TV, yeah? If there's two of you in a cell, 50p each. So they get a TV. You'd get pretty much a shower every day. You get to use the phones. You'd be out on some form of regime association. Enhanced, right? So if you've been in prison, then 3 months, warning free, model prisoner, you can apply for your enhanced, yeah? A sentenced prisoner gets 4 visits. As an enhanced prisoner, you get 2 extra visits a month, which is a massive thing. You'd be able to spend more money on your canteen, and you could, you know, apply to have one of the legendary PlayStations. I'll talk a bit more in a bit. The other side of it, if you're standard and you misbehave, you get warnings, you end up in front of a governor, you could be put on basic regime. Basic regime is exactly what it says. You get your bedding. A remand prisoner could keep the clothes. If you're a sentenced prisoner, your clothes will be taken off you and you'll be given prison issue clothing, a corned beef tracksuit. That's a tracksuit, corned beef in colour, no pockets, not stylish. Very, very basic.
And escape risk prisoners wear orange. Is that still?
Escape risk prisoners wear yellow and blue stripes. They stand out anywhere they are.
What makes somebody an escape risk?
The easiest way to explain it is somebody jumped dock in court, which people have done, i.e. literally got over the screen in court and got off. Yeah, they would be made, for obvious reasons, an escape risk. However, if you go back to the 80s, IRA prisoners, a lot of IRA prisoners in a high security prison, mafia type prisoners. These prisoners in organizations that have wealth, power, you know, they have everything. And by being in an organization like that, they can, you know, they could organize something like that and spring someone. So they might well be an escape risk. Other people, just by who they are, let me think, you know, serious armed robbers and the like, not necessarily in a big organization. Again, we used to have prisoners who would come in. So in my time, G-Wing was the induction wing, yeah? So you get somebody come in on G-Wing. Escape prisoners in strange ways were kept on the Cat A unit. Cat A unit was a secure unit. It was in the middle of the jail. Category A, highest risk prisoners. The E-listers would be located on there as well. Some prisoners were Cat A and E-list prisoners. So they'd be on the unit and they'd wear the stripes. We had a couple of prisoners, they would come on G-Wing. They didn't like G-Wing, they didn't like prison. They get on the phone to the mum and say, "Mum, get me Uncle Smith to get me out. You know, I want to come home." They might, that phone conversation might be overheard, and they might be put in stripes, E-list, and put on the Cat A unit. People did that because on the Cat A unit, they had a fantastic gym. They had a different regime. There was more staff. Most of the time they were out, not locked up. And we had prisoners, and that was their MO. "Mum, get me out. I'm going to get myself to hospital or whatever." Security would listen to that and bump. They're on the Cat A unit in blue and white stripes.
There's all these, I mean, as you write now, I guess other people have written too maybe, but there's all these like codes and rules that people seem to learn and pick up. And when you were talking about people coming into prison and getting used to it very quickly, but something like that, would that be somebody who had was returning to prison would understand that that's a trick almost?
Quite definitely, it was the same people. You know, they were the nephews of a well-known crime family. So, you know, that is how it operates. We knew why they were doing it. But again, you know, you can't take that risk. They have connections. So it'd be very difficult to get out. Most of the prison escapes, obviously lower security, right? So you've got Cat A high security prisons. Yep. dispersal, their long-term prison. Strangeways was a Cat A prison, high security estate, was also Cat B local. Yeah, so Cat B prisons, everyone comes into prison as a Cat B unless you're a Cat A. That has a certain level. It's like Strangeways and Forest Bank. You aren't getting out. Yeah. Next one down, Cat C prisons. Some of them have been made more secure in modern times, but again, difficult to get out of. If you get to a Cat D prison, that's an open prison. You don't escape. You have, you abscond. So literally, there's no fence as such. You can literally just walk off. Most prison escapes that get talked about are on prison escorts. So that's somebody on the way, say, somewhere like court or hospital, or when they are out on escort, like in hospital or something like that. Very few escape from within an establishment.
And within the establishment, when someone doesn't comply with a direct order, they can be given an adjudication. Can you explain a bit more about the adjudication process and the segregation unit?
So again, it's under the IEP scheme, right? Again, every officer is different. Me, to place someone on report, which is to give them a nicking, which means they're going to be on adjudication. It's like a mini justice process within the prison. For me, it'd be actually something quite serious. If someone threatened you with a weapon, or you were assaulted or something similar, you would have to place someone on report. If someone refused anywhere where there was a restraint, someone needs to be placed on report. It's almost justifying your restraint. So if you're refusing to go behind your door, I need you behind your door, gentle push, we end up restraining you, you're going to be placed on report, yeah? Or you're going to have an adjudication. So adjudications, Monday to Friday and Saturday mornings in a segregation unit. The segregation unit is obviously the block, solitary confinement, whatever you want to call it. They're now called care and separation units. You know, they tried to get away from the kudos thing. I'm going down the block. However, you know, again, it's just political correctness gone mad. So how the process works, if you yourself have been placed on report by me, the morning of the adjudication, you'll be taken to the segregation unit, placed in a holding cell, and then you would appear in front of a governor. The layout, big table, imagine a big dining table. You have the governor at one end. One side of him would be the senior officer. The other side would be the reporting officer. So that would be me having placed you on report. The prisoner will be brought in. While standing, he would give name and number to the governor. All very formal this. The governor would then invite him to sit down. The two escorting staff would sit behind him. Yeah. He would be made to have his legs under the table, chair up to the table, and they would put their legs on the back of his chair. People can kick off, you know, in here. That, you know, is a precaution. Make it as difficult possible for them to stand up. The senior officer would then read out the charge, you know, Officer Samworth placed you on report for refusing to go behind your door. The governor would read his bit. He'd ask you to put a plea in. If you went guilty at first time, you would get a lesser punishment. The least punishment being a caution. If you had assaulted somebody, went not guilty, and they had to go through a process, you know, you could end up on CC, which is cellular confinement down the segregation, which is basically nothing. You're in a cell with nothing, you know, held down there under the governor's jurisdiction, and everything else in between.
Because I've defended people for adjudications, and they tend to have been with external judges that come in.
Oh, they have to be external judges. You know, the power to give people added days was taken away from prison governors. So at Strangeways, I think it was twice a month on Tuesdays or something like that, they would have a district judge in. You know, quite often, if you were coming up to a point where you are getting out and you're on a serious charge, you put a not guilty in, you know, it ends up in front of a district judge. If it's the week you get out, there's not a lot people can do. So yeah, it's just part of the legal process.